Standing in the valley of Elah today in Israel, it's not that spectacular. It probably looks a lot like it did back then. It's just almost like you maybe a valley in Cache Creek or something. The riverbed is dried up now, and there's a major highway running right by it. But having stood there, I know what it was like, where you had mountain up one side, mountain up the other side, and they, because of geography and all that, they know where basically this thing happened, where David, armed with a few stones from this brook, faces off against the mighty giant Goliath of Gath. Now think about this. Goliath, well, he was tall to begin with. A normal ceiling, is about 8 feet tall, kind of where that ridge is. This ceiling at the peak is 10 feet tall, and some scholars, historians say that Goliath, with his headdress, actually stood maybe 13 feet tall. That's a monster of a man. He was huge, and probably a descendant of the Nephilim, sons of Anak. He was one of these massive guys, trained in warfare, a fighting man all his life. He was in every way intimidating, more powerful than like 5 men put together. He was just a fighting giant. And yet it says that David ran to face him, ran to the battle. Most of us would run away from the battle, which is what the Israelite people were kind of doing in some ways. They were shaking in their boots. But we read about it where prior to facing Goliath, David told King Saul these words. It says, but David, this is 1 Samuel 17:34. David said to Saul, your servant used to keep sheep for his father. And when there came a lion, now think about this, when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him. So it wasn't that he was just attacked by a lion. He went and attacked the lion. He went and attacked the bear. He went after him and he struck him. It says, and I struck him and I delivered it out of his mouth. So took the lamb right out of his mouth. And if he rose against me, I caught him by his beard. Think about this. He catches this lion or a bear by his beard and struck him and killed him. He says, your servant has struck down both lions, plural, and bears, plural, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them. Wow. For he's defied the armies of the living God, he says. And David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. Wow. So David ran to the battle. He ran with faith. He loaded up his sling from that brook with stones by faith. He let loose that sling, trusted sling. He let loose with faith. In fact, it was a stone, yes, that hit Goliath, so he got the point, literally. But it was faith that took down the giant. It was faith that David was running in, fighting in, a stone flung by faith, a faith guided that stone to its mark. Now, when David was beaking off at Goliath, they were kind of trash talking each other. David said, man, your day is done, pal. That all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord, it's like the Lord saves not with a sword or a spear, for the battle is the Lord's, he says. The battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into my hand. So it was all about faith. It says in 1 Samuel 17:18, when the Philistines arose and they came near and drew near to meet David, when this giant, all right, and he starts talking about him like, come on, I'm going to feed you to the birds. David put out his hand and he took out a stone and he slung this stone and it struck the Philistine in the forehead, and the stone sank into his forehead, and he said, oh, I never saw that coming. It says that he fell on his face to the ground. He didn't even fall backwards. It was like, and then David ran and stood over the Philistine, took his sword, the Philistine sword, and drew it out of its sheath. He hadn't even got it out of the sheath yet. And he just killed him. And he killed him. The stone didn't kill him. It was the sword that killed him. It says he killed him and he cut off his head with it. When the Philistines, the armies saw this, they're like, oops. They ran. I mean, they saw their champion was dead, lying there flat, and they fled. And it says the men of Israel and the men of Judah just rose up like with a shout, like, yeah! And they pursued the Philistines as far as Gath and the gates of Ekron. So that it says that the wounded Philistines fell on the way in their escape all the way to Gath, all the way to the gates. The people of Israel, they came back from chasing the Philistines. They routed them. They plundered their camp, and it says that David took the head of the Philistine, brought it into brought it into Jerusalem, stuck his armor, brought it into his tent. They say fear is contagious. And also, courage is contagious. Courage is contagious. And courage seems to fan the flame of faith. Despite this great victory, though, David, his life goes from the pasture, tending sheep, to the desert caves. It will end up in the palace, but he's got a journey in front of him. Sometimes life throws you curveballs. Sometimes 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4. Did he still have faith? Did he still serve God? Did he still worship God? Yeah, he processed this journey honestly, just pouring out his life to God at times when he didn't understand it. He stayed faithful? Yes, he did. Will you? When life throws you a curveball, when you go sideways because you weren't expecting something, stay faithful. Keep trusting God. He's far bigger than any giant you'll ever face. Selah.